whether countries have the capacity to pay back the money that they are so readily accepting. The key issue in Balochistan right now is the underutilization, perhaps it's more accurate to say non-utilization of Gwadar Port. With Balochistan going back to 1948, you can't ignore history.
No, you can't.
So those are the type of deep questions.
Hello and welcome to New Wave History, and I'm really delighted to be joined by Professor Hassan Karrar from LUMS, and he's an associate professor there specializing in China and Central Asia. Welcome, Hassan. Thank you so much for your time. Let's now get to the CPEC, or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, because I think that merits a little more focus. And so, as you know, you've also noted that in your writing, I mean, how CPEC was seen as a game changer, as a transformational moment. That was almost a decade ago, or a bit more than that. And since then, we've seen the rise and sort of, I wouldn't say the fall, but kind of, plateauing of CPEC, the idea. $40 to $60 billion. They say at least $40 billion have been invested, maybe up to 60. I mean, the numbers, of course, vary. They're from China or Pakistan. I mean, they add everything up. And of course, some infrastructure developments have been witnessed. Power sector has benefited. But there's been a lot of politics around that as well, both domestic and external as well. Now, what is the current status of CPEC as a joint or Pakistan's effort to be part of the larger BRI, program?
Wow. Okay, that's another big question.
I know, very complex. Sorry for
I'm happy to respond to it.
You're the China scholar, so
no. I'm very happy to respond to it. Okay, so my own understanding is, and I could be wrong on this, but my own understanding is that there hasn't been investment under the CPEC mechanism, or there hasn't been new investment under the CPEC mechanism for quite some time. Now, I want to very quickly make a distinction between money that comes in under the CPEC investment mechanism and money that comes in from China that's not under the CPEC mechanism. So as we were discussing earlier, the two dams that are being constructed on the Indus, the Dasu Dam and the Amar Basha Dam, those are not part of CPEC. And in fact, their financing is very complex as well. There's money coming from the state, from foreign donors as well.
The World Bank,
exactly,
you name it. Yeah.
But they are being built with, I understand, Chinese technical expertise, or certainly Chinese technical input. So there's quite a bit of complexity as far as the gradations, if you may, of Chinese engagement in different infrastructure projects in this country is concerned. Specifically under CPEC, I'm not sure that there's been a recent large investment in this country. Now, I suspect, and I'm going out on a little bit of a limb over here, but this is deduction. This is something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. I suspect there's a couple of reasons for this, and I don't think it's Pakistan only. I think that around about the time of COVID-19, again, I'm using that as a temporal break. Around about the time of COVID-19, it appears that there was some introspection on the part of financiers of large infrastructure as to whether countries have the capacity to pay back the money that they are so readily accepting. And once again, using the example of Kenya, what we find is that the single gauge railway, which was supposed to connect Mombasa to the sort of eventually Uganda and then potentially beyond that project is halted just beyond Nairobi, so it's not completed. And from my understanding, there was a sense on the part of Chinese financiers that, look, we're not going to finance this project further. And there are questions which are asked in Kenya as to whether the country has the capacity to actually pay back those loans in a timely fashion. Same story in Sri Lanka, sort of heard echoes of this in Malaysia as well. Pakistan, this question comes up, the amount of debt that Pakistan has taken on from China. So I think one of the reasons why we might be seeing a plateauing out of money coming in under the CPEC mechanism is that there's a questioning that do states even have the capacity to pay back this money? Now, one thing that one hears from people in China is that these are loans. This is not aid.
Yes.
And our job is not to sure, mutual benefit aside, our job is not to do your development work for you. And in quite those many words, Chinese diplomats in Pakistan have said so much as well that look, at the end of the day, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And you've got to fix this house yourself. So that's one thing. The other thing I note about CPEC is that the special economic zones never got off the ground.
Yes.
And I think that is a real missed opportunity.
Real setback to me as well.
Special economic zones were where the country would have built capacity.
And you would have hubs of both employment and technological innovation.
And that was a complete non-starter. I mean, it's not that, they were built, but they never actually got, I mean,
the idea was never took off.
Never took off. And there's obviously a lot of questions that are directly linked with the planning of a special economic zone, the success of a special economic zone. But I don't even think those sort of questions were being seriously asked by the planners.
Correct.
And so that, if there was going to be a game changer, then I think that had the potential to be one. Now, obviously, we have more electricity, we have better motorways. Those are all, benefiting people like you and me. But in terms of long-term capacity building, I think that there was a missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity. So if you look at the trajectory, started with a big bang, and lots of investments in power sector, and of course, energy crisis has been partly handled through that. And lots of infrastructure, road expansion, some railway project is now underway. But then we see that, when the government changes in Pakistan in 2017 and 2018, the incoming government, the commerce minister says, we have to slow it down. There's a lot of corruption going on. And then the Chinese react. Yeah. Pakistan's military chief flies to Beijing, to do some firefighting. And then, of course, lots of grandiose words. But there was also much debate in Pakistan that Pakistan was perhaps signaling the West, in particular America, that, okay, yes, we are on board and China is a partner, but, we are slowing it down. Yeah. How far you think that was the case? I know it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's a tough question, but I think especially given the events of this last year, when we've seen a real proximity between Pakistan and the United States, a type of proximity that I don't think we've seen since a long time. Not even maybe the early Musharraf years was the last time when we saw this type of proximity. No, the only thing that I want to say on that, and it's a thought that I've had for a few months now. And I do want to think about this a little bit more, maybe weave this into some of the work that I'm going to be doing going forward. But the relationship, I'm struck by how deep the relationship between Pakistan and the US is. It is. Now, Pakistan and the US tend to bicker quite a bit as well. But going back to the 1950s, when Pakistan was part of US alliance systems, I think that there is a very real proximity between these two countries. The 1950s would be a decade of proximity between the two countries. The 1980s, of course, the Zia years. And then the first couple of years of the Musharraf years. So it's almost as if this is a fourth homecoming for Pakistan and the US.
Homecoming, very good.
I'm
very telling.
This is now sort of getting a little outside of my regional expertise, but just as someone sort of sitting in Pakistan and just reading the news, I'm like, wow.
I know.
I mean, this is,
how exactly? I don't know. Even some of the Americans are startled by President Trump's bonhomie, But anyway, so I think two factors other than this signaling, I think were driving. One, we briefly talked about the capacity of a state like Pakistan to repay the amount of loans they raise, and certainly Pakistan entered into a huge fiscal crisis as well, 2019 onwards, and then the IMF stepped in to give a bailout. The other has been the issue of security, with the domestic, different violent groups, non-state actors, militias, what is commonly known as terrorists, quote unquote. They have also been a bone of contention between China and Pakistan, in particular with the progress under CPEC umbrella. And of course, Pakistan has, China even raised the question of bringing its own security on ground. Pakistan has been hesitant so far. They promised they'll raise a battalion. They even set up a CPEC Authority, if you remember, in the previous government's time. And then nothing came out of that. I think it was it's there on paper, a very sketchy thing. So, I mean, there are serious issues of implementation, if I may say so, under the CPEC umbrella. And do you see them being sorted out or ironed out? I mean, are the Chinese still as invested in the idea or not? I mean, because you read their papers and you read their reports and their academic, research.
I think they are invested. My understanding is that they take the security question very seriously. So this is something that is non-negotiable. And my sense also, from my very, very distant perch, is that the leadership here in this country do realize that. Along with that, I would also say that there may be a rethinking happening in terms of what the scale of the projects going forward ought to be. And it might vary. And so one of the things that one is hearing increasingly is the phrase "small is beautiful." So one model of one possibility is that you build a dam. The other is that you build a solar park, right? So which one has which one is easier to do? The solar park, right? So it might very well be that going forward we're going to be seeing perhaps, and again this is me sort of just conjecturing, but it might very well be that going forward we're going to see less of the big spectacular projects and more of these small is beautiful type of easy to manage initiatives. So that's perhaps
the future roadmap.
That's what I would conjecture, because with these large projects, they just require so much mobilization of financing and resources, and ultimately in this case, security as well.
Security, and with that leads me to the other important point in terms of the future CPEC roadmap, whether it's large scale, small, or fragmented, or maybe staggered over years or decades, are two flashpoints. One, of course, is Balochistan, where you have, what we were earlier talking about, local communities feeling marginalized, bypassed, exploited, and violent resistance in pockets to that. The other, of course, which you have extensively covered, is the Gilgit-Baltistan region, mired in a whole geopolitical conflict with India, but also where it's less violent, but there's disaffection among many people whom you've interviewed as well. So let's take Balochistan first, and then we go to, because these are the two important areas if CPEC has to roll out and meet some of its foundational goals.
Balochistan, I think the key issue in Balochistan right now is the is the underutilization, perhaps it's more accurate to say non-utilization of Gwadar Port. And the fact that Gwadar, as a small city, is heavily securitized. I haven't been there myself, but people who have been there speak about the fact that there's multiple checkposts within the city.
Yes.
So, the question that then arises is that, and I think Gwadar is kind of interesting because Gwadar was supposed to be the new Dubai. So, the question that then, and
far from it, by the way, people who've been there,
right?
Yeah, a lot of my friends have been there,
exactly, and
colleagues, and we have a reporter there,
and they're all saying the same thing, that movement is very difficult, heavily securitized, checkposts. Now, whether or not that is needed is a completely separate issue.
Yeah.
But the fact is that here you have an area where a lot of money, a lot of development money, a lot of construction money was diverted to. And this is the reality on the ground. Almost 25 years since that deep water port construction, deep sea port construction was first begun by a Chinese company. I think Musharraf did the ground.
That's right.
Musharraf was there at the groundbreaking as well in March 2002. So the first thing that one would have to do would be to implement policies whereby that infrastructure could actually be used in the way in which it was envisioned. And then, obviously that port would need to be connected to transnational shipping routes on the one hand and inland to some other place in Pakistan. Once you offload in Gwadar, where are those goods actually going to go? Now, it might very well be that there's multiple best case scenarios. Perhaps it could be used for sort of what's coming out of Sandak, Ricodec, whatnot. But I think the larger point is that that's not happening, and it's not clear when that will actually happen. So I think in that sense, the Gwadar story is an interesting one of sort of what wasn't realized, and then one can sort of. I mean, I do this as a social scientist. I mean, that's who I am. But I'm imagining journalists would have another angle, policymakers,
of course,
government.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important question to ask. Why did this not turn out the way it was supposed to?
Yeah.
So that's Balochistan, and the answer is very it's probably more complex than we can get through.
Sure.
But sort of it would certainly have to take into account Pakistan's very difficult relationship with Balochistan going back to 1948. You can't ignore history.
No, you can't.
So those are the type of deep questions that would need to be.
So it's linked to that larger political settlement that we ought to.
Yeah, I mean,
Pakistan ought to.
I don't see how it can't be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that this notion that you can parachute into an area, build infrastructure, and if you build infrastructure, it will work by itself. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. So history, and you probably know this better than I do, but history in Balochistan is very weighty. I mean, those and.
That's a larger political question.
Yeah, and maybe that conversation is happening behind closed doors, but we're certainly not privy to it. We're not privy to it. Gilgit-Baltistan, I mean that's another one of these areas where there was a lot of expectation in terms of what increased connectivity with China would be able to provide, which. Not entirely, but which to a large extent have been unrealized. So they have been realized in the sense that you find that there's a lot of young people from GB who learn Chinese.
Yes.
There's a lot of them who study in China. There are a lot of small traders in Gilgit-Baltistan who travel regularly to Xinjiang. And, running small businesses, contributing to the household economy. And one can say that increased connectivity has overall been beneficial for them. To what extent all of this was facilitated by CPEC, I think, is an open-ended question. And, I'd be hesitant to
But it's certainly one of the drivers.
It's one of the drivers.
Yeah.
And there's an increased interest in China. There's a renewed sense
certainly,
there is sort of instead of just looking down country, which is the gaze that traditionally was driving migration out of Gilgit-Baltistan to
Absolutely, yeah.
Rawalpindi to Karachi. Now there's the possibility.
They're looking.
They're looking
Up
looking
country.
across Punjab and sort of finding employment opportunities. Those of I know someone who sort of from Hunza speaks fluent Chinese. Works as a translator. So again, finding these niches and contributing in a very, very positive way. So these are all examples of how.
But what should be done, Dr. Karrar, because you've looked at, you've spoken to so many people there. I was looking at your case study of this Afiyatabad.
Yes.
This is a very interesting case.
Yeah.
And somewhere in Shamshal also you looked at a market,
Right.
a village, I think, which trade hub village type. So, I mean, where can some amends be made? Because to get these people, I mean, of course, there's a larger political question, once again, like Balochistan, what is to be done for their political rights?
Yeah.
Because they're still excluded.
Yeah.
They're not part of the parliament yet.
Yeah.
They're not even recognized as a
That's right.
province because it's linked to
right.
the India-Kashmir issue,
That's right.
all of that. But what in the main because Afiyatabad was really instructive. Because what you said that it has just turned into a transit point.
Yeah.
It has not gained from all the fruits which were imagined.
Yeah.
That there would be a thriving local economy, there would be local exchange, or the the Silk Route type of idea that we have.
That's right. Yeah, no, I mean the Afiyatabad story is it's an interesting one. It's actually one that I'm still thinking about, and it's one that may have evolved since I published the paper.
Right.
So that paper was based upon multiple visits to Afiyatabad, sort of otherwise known as Sust Bazar.
This is on the border of near to Pakistan-China border.
So the driving time has decreased fairly substantially. In the 1990s, from this point to the border would have taken 4 hours. Now I think it's less than 2 hours. That's sort of the upgrading of the.
I worked there in 1990s. Tell me about it. It was an ordeal, but I believe things have really changed now.
I think the travel time to the border is now half of what it used to be. When I published that paper, what I was hearing in the marketplace was that the border regime had become much more stringent after CPEC, as a result of which it was no longer viable for small traders to go to Kashgar and do small-scale purchasing and bringing goods back and selling them in the market, or maybe taking them down to Gilgit. When I went more recently, I was there last year, about this time last year, and then I think 2 years before that, there was a slightly different vibe. And at that point in time, what we were seeing was an increase in traffic. Once again, to what extent we can attribute that to CPEC is difficult to say. That being said, as you probably know, there are issues with consignments being stuck at the border, and the traders have become something of a lobby in Gilgit-Baltistan as well. So yeah, I mean, these sort of issues, I think, to me, are indicative of entanglements, small entanglements at times, but which from local places appear very, very large.
Right.
And they come about when new relationships between countries, between regions are being fomented, and they need to be addressed. And I think the lesson over here, if I can say so, is that we talk about China, Pakistan, we talk about proximity, we talk about friendship between these two countries, and all of that is correct. But we imagine that things are just going to work out automatically. But whether it's GB, whether it's Balochistan, whether it's another part of the country, whether it's Sahiwal and the sort of coal power plants, what we end up seeing is that when that association deepens, these multiple entanglements emerge. And, these need to be addressed on a case-to-case basis.
Yes.
So as this relationship between the two countries goes forward, I think that there needs to be the spirit of saying that, okay, this is going to throw up some challenges. Let's see if we can figure it out.
Yes, very interesting. And my last point that I have is that, obviously CPEC is, getting implemented in a particular context within Pakistan and within the context of historic Pakistan-China relations, which are also very security-centric, strategic as is known. And the May 2025 limited war with India once again demonstrated that, Pakistan's kind of employing Chinese weaponry, Pakistan's fluency in handling those weapons, and of course Chinese pride that their weaponry has arrived on the world in the theater of war has been tested effectively. Now, obviously, we can't divorce security in Pakistan from politics. They are also intertwined, such is the case of history. So what I'm going to ask you is as follows: that Pakistan's growing and cemented security relationship with China, it's there to stay now. I mean, that's pretty much, given that 80% or so of our defense supplies are coming from China.
Yeah.
But it is obviously affecting Pakistan's domestic politics, according to a lot of observers as well. In the sense that larger argument is that Pakistani state feels far more empowered now that they have the US blessings on the one hand, and the Chinese, multi-domain, whatever that is called, the technological warfare, inclusion of Chinese defense systems. That has made Pakistani state even more authoritarian. It has always, it's a post-colonial state. The DNA is such, but now it's become, and we are seeing some of those manifestations, which are both a continuity of the past, but also indicate the brazen sort of embodiment of the Pakistani state, how it views politics, dissent, opposition. Do you subscribe to this view, or? I know this is again a can of worms.
It's a good question, and look, I think that certainly, and this is just me reading the newspaper every day. But I think that there was and there has been very obvious triumphalism on the part of the leadership in this country. That it came out triumphant in this very limited conflict that we had with India. Sort of what the ultimate tally is, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that's sort of ultimately sort of fairly irrelevant point as far as I'm concerned. My sort of I'll take this in a slightly different direction.
Sure.
What I'm going to say is that sure. There is this sense of triumph, and there is the sense that Pakistan prevailed over this traditional adversary, India. However we did that, to what extent we owe that to the Chinese, I don't know. I can't say. But I think there is a very real danger that by focusing on this so-called moment of triumph, we're ignoring some of the real challenges that are facing this country. So I think Pakistan's biggest challenge right now is not from across the border, whether it's India, whether it's Afghanistan. The challenges facing us in this country are, it's sort of increasing dissatisfaction in the periphery.
Yeah.
It's a youth bulge which doesn't have much in terms of, or doesn't see much in terms of prospects for gainful employment in this country. People leaving this country in larger and larger measures. The inability to actually add capacity in a way that's meaningful for the country and for the international community. So I think those climate change, the way in which every year now infrastructure in this country is battered by an erratic climate, and the way in which people suffer as a result of that, food insecurity, lack of water. These are the existential crises facing this country, and not, if I can say so. I think these pose a bigger threat than Afghanistan or India. I think many people would disagree with me on this.
No.
I think it's these demographic challenges, it's these development challenges, which will ultimately pose severe constraints
And risks. Yeah.
and sort of imposed risks on this country, far more than anything.
I so agree with you. I think, yeah. But but anyway, I think Pakistan-China relationship is going to grow. I mean, that's a given. So I guess we can conclude, and let's revisit CPEC maybe in a year's time,
I look forward to that.
where things said. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so
This
much.
was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.